that true player shit. We gon' make it live with Big Dom. We ain't holding no punches. True players, we live, homie, no frontin'. Always talk about something. So taking over, you know that the wait is over. That in your face commentary is fire in the show up. We talk about sports, finance, and relationships. True players, we always playing the greatest hits. 1804, that mean Hades lit. Mothers still the true players like baby kicks. Our live podcast is hard as hard hats. Real life shit, that true players will talk that. So tune in and watch the whole world zoom in.
When they live at another True Players podcast episode. Got special guests in the building. Guest host, so you guys already know him. Is Ricky Brown on the guest host again, coming live on that. Absolutely, yes. And the True Players podcast, special subject for you today. Me and Ricky came up with a subject tonight that we want to speak about. Is the use of the word, use of the N-word, nigga, in the neighborhoods by not just by Black folks, but other folks such as Latinos and whites using that word, and basically our feelings in regards to that as far as that goes. My opinion, as a Black man, it bothers me that the word nigga is used in any context, whether if it's amongst friends, family members, things like that. That bothers me altogether. So when I hear a white person use it in a text, and in context, I heard the Latinos speak in the context, that kind of bothers me 2 times forward. But at the same time, I feel that I can't really say anything if we're using it against each other. So, how do you feel about that, Ricky?
Yeah, I'm glad you started off with that, because I do feel the same way to an extent, because how do I tell you not to wear red shirts if I'm wearing red shirts? How do I tell you not to wear hats if I'm wearing hats? How do I tell you to stop using a word that I keep using?
Right.
Once upon a time, for 2 years, I made a conscious effort to remove the word from my vocabulary. And it was kind of coming from seeing people outside of my race use the word. Now, here's the flip side of that. Coming from Long Island, coming from Uniondale, living in Hempstead, living in Mineola, living in Jamaica, I've seen plenty of non-Blacks use the word.
Right.
And I've seen both Blacks and non-Blacks use the word lovingly and hatefully.
Right.
I'll give you an example of a classmate of ours who I will not name out of respect.
Mm-hmm.
But he was Caucasian,
mm-hmm.
and we were in the lunchroom. This was like 10th or 11th grade.
Right.
And the conversation came to MC Hammer.
Right.
And I think the whole point that I was trying to make was, you ain't got to like Hammer. The dude made his money.
Right.
And my man was like, yeah, but that nigga whack.
Right.
And I felt like I was the only one that heard him say that.
Right.
So I blew up his spot. I'm like, did anybody else not hear he just said nigga?
Right.
He didn't mean any harm by it. He wasn't being racist when he said it. And truth be told, the consensus among the table was that what he said was correct.
Right.
As far as a performer was concerned, especially in that era in the early 90s, where that New York grime, I don't want to use the term grime because that means something else right now.
Right.
But that New York hardcore rap was becoming very prominent.
Sure.
We were coming out of the West Coast era.
Sure.
Because the West was dominating the rap industry in the early 90s. You know, so by the time the mid '90s came along, you know, we've got Mobb Deep, we've got Wu-Tang Clan, we've got OGC, we've got Helter Skelter, you know, we've got Capone and Noriega, we've got all these, you know, we had Onyx.
Yes.
You know, like we had this you know, this resurgence, and it still didn't feel right, even though he was one of our friends, that he used the word. And to tell you the truth, I felt bad that I blew up his spot.
Right.
Because of the fact of the subject that we were talking about, it seemed almost like it was less of a big deal than the fact that he had used the word. Right. And now, however, as I've gotten older, it bothers me to see people outside of us use the word.
Right.
Now, I'll give you another example with what happened with Bill Maher. Right. He was interviewing some politician. I forget where the guy was from, but it was somewhere in the Midwest. And he was talking about how, you know, they've got these cornfields. And he says, you know, Bill, you got to come out there and come out in the field, you know, and work with us in the field. And Bill Maher goes, hey, Senator, I'm a house nigga. I mean, come on, you know the man's not being racist. I mean, you even laughed when you heard it, like the shit was funny.
Right.
But still, he had no right to use that word, especially particularly considering the fact that he's on the platform that he's on.
Exactly.
You know, because then what that does is it sets precedence where now, oh well, he's using the word. Right. And now the week after that, or 2 weeks after that, Ice Cube came on the show and broke it down for him. Now, mind you, this is a dude who made his career with a foundation of rap music in a group that used the word niggas in the name of the group.
Right.
And he told Bill Maher, he says, you know, y'all created the word.
Right.
And you used it to hurt us, but we took it and we embraced it and we found power in it. And now you can't have it back.
Right.
You don't get it back. Your ancestors fucked that up.
Right.
I mean, he didn't say all that, but that's basically what he said in a nutshell. And that pretty much sums up my thought and my feeling towards it. But the reason why we're having this discussion tonight is because you know, aside from my Baltimore experience, because I am below the Mason-Dixon line, they don't want to admit it, but this is the South where we're at.
Right.
Racism, I mean, once you really leave the New York tri-state area, you really get to see how black and white this country is. When you're in places where it's a real cultural melting pot, there are black and white issues, but there's also white on white issues, there's black on black issues, you know, there's Dominicans who got issues with Haitians, there's Haitians that got issues with Jamaicans, you know what I mean? There's Italians that got issues with Irish, there's Irish that got issues with the Jews. Like, you know, in New York, it's a different dynamic. That's not to say that there's no black, white issues in New York, but you see more dynamic issues and more cultural issues. Once you leave outside that tri-state area, there is no cultural issues. It's black and it's white.
Right.
And I say that to say that my experience down here is similar to what happened recently, where there's a gentleman called the King of DIY. He's got a huge YouTube following. He's reaching out to other social media outlets. And apparently he had this young man come onto his live stream and Instagram. And this guest who he had on his live stream and Instagram happened to be a white kid from Brooklyn.
Okay.
From what I understand, he was a minor, and had he known that this individual was a minor, because his settings are set to, you know, people 18 and up, but had he known that this kid was a minor, he wouldn't have had him on in the first place.
Right.
But at the same time, this kid drops the N-bomb.
Right.
And Joey repeats the shit.
Oh no.
You know, it's one thing when your guest comes into your house and fucks up. It's another thing when you do it.
That's true.
So then he has this reaction where because he gets confronted about it, you know, because he's on Instagram
Mm-hmm.
and people are calling him out for his shit. And he's like, well, I didn't say Nigger, which is nigger. I did say nigga.
Right.
Like, are you fucking stupid? Like, there's a difference between the word, especially coming from a white mouth.
Right.
And this has paralleled my experience here in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can tell you on 2 occasions, I mean, I'm about to turn 42 this year. I ain't the same person I was 10, 15 years ago. But I can tell you about 10, 15 years ago, I had a white kid talking to a black girl, and she happened to be a bull.
Mm-hmm.
And her comment was, even though she's a bull, she's still a quote unquote lady. She
Mm-hmm.
said, I can't stand when bitches act like niggas. And the white dude says, yeah, I hate it when bitches act like niggas. That shit gets on my nerves. So I clocked him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you don't get to say that word, my dude. Like,
Right.
and the girl is arguing with me. It's like, he didn't say nigger, he said nigga. I'm like, what's the difference in the words? Like, well, nigger is a racist term. Nigga is not. Nigga is what we say. I said, we say nigger too. Yeah, but that's not how that's how white people say it. I'm like, white people say nigger and nigga.
Mm-hmm.
No, they don't. They put the on the end, and that's how you know it's racist. I'm like, that's bullshit. I done came across plenty Italians, plenty Jews, plenty New Yorkers that'll call you a nigga with a at the end of the word, and they talking about your black ass, and they not saying my brother, they not saying my friend. You know what I'm saying? At the same time, there's plenty of them that are coming at you like, yo, what's up, my nigga? You know what I mean? Like they don't mean no harm from it. So it doesn't matter how you end the word. One way you end the word does not make it more racist or less. What really matters is the intention and the energy that you put behind it. Because I've heard black people use the at the end of the word.
Mm-hmm.
Few and far between, but I've heard them do it.
Right.
Not a lot of times you'll hear them use the version of the word when they're quoting somebody else.
Right.
A lot of times. Sometimes it just comes out with the instead of a at the end of it. But there is no difference between the word. You're talking about the same you're talking about the same thing.
Right.
What you're doing is you're pronouncing it different. It's like saying cracker and cracker. So if I call a white man a cracker, I'm not being racist. What's up, my cracker? I say cracker, not cracker. Like, do you see how stupid that sounds?
Exactly.
But this is a discussion that I've had quite a few times with Baltimorean people who seem to accept white people dropping the N-bomb as long as there's a at the end of the word because they feel it's not being racist. I've seen it with my own eyes. I felt it. I've been called it by white people who use the word with the at the end of the word and they're being racist. Right. My point is, if you don't say the word to begin with, we don't have an issue and I don't have to sit here and try to figure out if you being racist or not.
You're absolutely right about that. The thing is, too, the word comes from a racist connotation anyway. That was derived by white people, so they have no permission to use that at all, without the whole thought of them being racist.
And in truth be told, whether you call it nigga or nigger, you're still mispronouncing the actual word that it came from. It's a Semitic word. It's negus, Negus. It means God or it means king.
Right.
And they took that word and they twisted it and they went from niggus to nigger
Mm-hmm.
to put us down and make us feel down and not realize the niggus that we were born to be.
Yeah, the kings.
Right. You know,
Down with the
negus
kings.
neguste, king of kings, lord of lords, god of gods. These are old terms that got twisted and turned in the nigger.
True.
Now, personally, I mean, again, Uniondale, Hempstead, Mineola, Jamaica, the places that I've lived, when I was living in New York, I've heard so many Latinos use the word that it honestly really doesn't bother me. What does bother me is when the white Latino uses it. Because to me, like I look at Latinos as not being a race. There's black Latinos, there's white Latinos, there's brown Latinos.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just like it's like saying Canadians. It's a nationality. There's black Canadians, there's white Canadians, there's brown Canadians.
Right.
Go down to Jamaica, they'll tell you that they're out of many, they're one people. But there's black Jamaicans, there's white Jamaicans, there's fucking Chinese Jamaicans, there's fucking Indians. And I don't mean Native Americans, I mean the motherfucking coolie motherfuckers that came from India, from the East Indies to the West Indies. Like you got, you know, just because there's a stereotypical look of a person doesn't mean that you're defining a race. And you know, I'll give them La Raza Latina, you know, because they're all connected by their common Native American ancestry. However, some of that Native American ancestry is African ancestry. Some of that Native American ancestry is Mongoloid, you know, the people that came across the Bering Strait. And then some of that Latino ancestry also goes back to Spain, which is in Europe, which means they're European. They got European blood. So, you know, I say all that to say it never bothered me hearing like Fat Joe or Big Pun drop the N word.
Right.
Like I never had a problem with that. You know, if I didn't know Daddy Yankee and I heard him drop the N bomb, I might take exception to it because, like, who is you? And then he starts speaking some Spanish, like, oh, okay. Because, you know what I'm saying? Like, 'cause to me, he looks white from the jump. But to hear that he's Latino almost it almost eases me. And then to know that he's Puerto Rican, where half the damn island is black anyway, but that's a whole nother podcast. But you know, and like there's you know, there's communities down there where the people don't call themselves black, they call themselves African.
Right.
Because they see what America thinks of black people, and since America took over their land and they started getting American television and they see what America thinks of blacks, they refuse to call themselves black and they call themselves African, they call themselves Africanos.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is not a large community, but I think it's is it Ponce or one of those small towns where, you know, the black people don't call themselves black, they call themselves Africans, because we know what you Americans think of black people and how you treat black people. And we refuse to let you do that to us because we're proud Africans.
Absolutely.
Now that's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
That's a beautiful thing, you know. But back to the subject at hand, I don't think it's right for these to you know, at this point they may have invented the word, but now at this point, like Ice Cube said, we've taken the word, it's ours now.
Right.
And if you're going to use the word, you're an outsider using the word. So to me, I'm seeing these outsiders try to use the word.
Right.
You know, and you know, Ice Cube is actually the generation before me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I'm 42. Ice Cube must be like 52, you know, maybe close to 60. I don't know, but like, I mean, he was a grown ass man in the 80s. You know what I'm saying? So
he was a teenager, I would say.
Probably. But he did say fucking with me because I'm a teenager with a little bit of gold in the pager.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I mean, what I'm saying is he's still older than me. Let's fast forward to this millennia and look at another performer who's younger than us, and that would be Kendrick Lamar.
Right.
Because he invited a fan on stage, a young white lady, and she started singing his lyrics, and this dude stopped the show.
Mm-hmm.
He said, no, 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 stop the music, stop the music, stop the music. And she's like, what, am I not cool enough? And he's like, no, 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 you're cool.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to erase one of those words from the lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, oh, did I say it? And he's like, yeah, you said it. And then they both knew what the word was. The word was nigga. And these were his lyrics that he had her repeating. And
Mm-hmm.
he's telling her, don't say that shit, because you don't get the right to say that. I know I wrote these lyrics, but I didn't write these lyrics for you.
Right.
You know,
so
you're
right.
an outsider.
You are so right about that. Another thing too, what I want to reference this too. I don't know if you remember the skit in WWE where Vince McMahon used that word, and no one said a peep about that. I'm going to share the screen with you. I'm going to actually play that.
Yes, when he was talking to John Cena.
Yep. I'm going to play that for you right now.
WWE title match tonight. Cena versus Angle. John Cena. You screw Cena. You screw Cena. You screw Cena.
I'm not sure if this is the exact one, but
no, it doesn't look like it. Unless he did it twice and I didn't know about it.
What's up, boss? What's good in the hood?
Oh no, that is it. Because there go Booker T and Sharmell.
Yeah.
He didn't just say that. Now, when that happened, that was the second time I boycotted wrestling. I originally boycotted wrestling after the Katie Vick issue, because I was in school for mortuary science, and I thought that was just sick, that they're gonna have Triple H sit up there and molest a mannequin in a coffin, like that was just fucking disgusting. But I'm like, you know what? It's wrestling. It's all part of the show. Fuck it, I like it. I'm gonna keep watching.
Right.
And I came back to watching, and then that shit happened. I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I'm done. Fucking VKM drops the M-bomb.
Right. That's crazy.
And this was, I was big in the wrestling forums during that time period. I was Dead Fred 821. Yeah, I was a moderator on like BWR, and I'm in the mix talking about shoots and promos and angles and who should get pushes and who's coming from what organization, and shit. I feel like I was a big part of the movement that pushed TNA into the mainstream when they were still doing their weekly shows were pay-per-view shows.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? This was around the time when TNA was becoming a regular mainstream product.
Right.
And it's entirely possible that Vince was constantly looking for that quote unquote shock value to make people turn to and watch his company. At the same time, they could have been looking at it, well, like, let's test the waters, because we've got this John Cena character who actually has a decent album that's out there. Now, you real hip hop heads, you know what I'm talking about. And you know the reason why this dude did not go platinum is because like he's got like real lyrics on his album.
Right.
It's not pop. It's not that cute shit. It's not that WWE friendly shit. Like he's really MCing. Don't nobody want to hear that. They want to hear about pills and potions and thugging out. Like don't nobody want to hear no raw rhymes. You know, that
Right.
they let backpack and cipher shit now. You know, but he's got some respect in the underground rap community. Yo, let's throw this at him. And even Cena looked uncomfortable receiving the word. Like, the fuck is you doing, dude?
Right. Right. You saw his look on his eyes like, yo, Cena's like, what the fuck you doing? This is not smart right now. This is really, what are you doing?
Yeah, yeah. Like you just, yeah. Like, my rap career was already holding on by a thread. You just killed
Yeah,
it.
basically, he sure did. And the thing is about Cena too, his lyrics was popping. He had some balls. He had some balls.
He did.
And
And
but
he wasn't no Rakim, but you had to
no.
give it to him.
Yeah, he had some balls.
Yeah.
But the thing was how it's funny how when he said it, it went unnoticed. When Booker T messed up and said it on WCW
Oh my God.
telecast, in the midst of cutting a promo,
Yes.
it was talked about. It was like,
My,
what is he
my my
doing?
whole issue with that situation though was that was NWA or was it WCW?
WCW.
Okay, it was WCW. I don't think that shit was live.
No, it was live. It was excuse me. I believe it was a Nitro.
It was Nitro.
I believe it was on a Nitro.
Okay. Well, see, then that kills my argument because my whole point was why didn't they just reshoot it?
Right.
Because I mean, he was feeling it. He was in the moment, like Hogan, we coming for you, nigga. And like you see him like just cover his face as soon as he says it. And Mean Gene, being the professional that he is, well, you heard it here first, folks. Like, cut the
Yeah.
goddamn camera.
The guy that exactly. But yet, let me go to another situation. You know, this was a wrestler who was everybody's hero before the sex tape came out, Mr. Hulk Hogan. When he used the N word in reference to a guy that his daughter was dating, and how much fans that he lost in the process, how much disrespect, or how much respect he lost to all the black community because he used the word nigger. Um, I'm not defending Hulk Hogan at all. I felt it was poor choice of words in reference to a guy that his daughter was dating. It became a whole situation about race and stuff like that. But he did mention later on in that video, in that recording, that we all got a little racism in us.
And you know what? First of all, I don't give Hogan a pass, but I do agree with him. We do all have racism in us,
Right.
and to say that blacks can't be racist, that's bullshit.
Right.
And that is bullshit. First of all, white people are a minority on this planet. They may be a majority in this country, but they are a minority on this planet. There are less white people on this planet than there are other people.
Right.
They are a minority on this planet. And it is entirely possible for us to be racist. And there is a theory out there. I'm somewhat inclined to believe it partially, but not fully, that part of the reason white supremacy exists is because of the racist treatment that they received as a people. And they ended up becoming the cannibalistic conquerors that they are today, or that they were generations removed from. Hold on a second. Yeah. No. Okay. So my bad. I could edit that out.
Okay.
But yeah. So like I was saying, I do not give Hogan a pass.
Mm-hmm.
But I do agree with him that there is a little that there is some type of form of racism within us all. In fact, you can see it in the black community where we treat light-skinned and dark-skinned people differently. We speak, we treat people with thick accents differently. Oh, you're from one of those Arab countries. Oh, you're from one of those French countries. Oh, you must be African. Or like, we and you can call that an American thing, but you go over to France, the black community over there does it. If you go over to Spain, the black community over there does it. If you go down into, if you go down into Brazil, is a little more unity because, I mean, you might have a set of twins where one is black and one is white.
Correct.
Yeah, you know, and it's a completely different world in Brazil.
There's a lot of internal racism amongst the black race because you got Black Americans who don't like Caribbean people, Caribbean blacks.
Yeah,
You got Africans who don't like Caribbean blacks, and you got Africans who don't like African Americans.
yeah.
So it's institutionalized racism within our race, and it all started from the time that we were put on those boats to be taken over to the Americas, to all these other countries to be slaves. The quote unquote story was they quote unquote gave the weakest Africans to the slaveholders to be taken to slavery, quote unquote. So, you know, whether you believe that is true or not is another whole nother story. Because there's a country down there in the Caribbean that thinks otherwise, and they're thinking by one number, 1804. But
Ooh.
so we
If we're gonna talk about Louis Vuitton, that's a whole nother podcast.
it is all the podcast how the racism between blacks is wrong because we should be coming together. But I felt in my dealings with African people, you know, I'm not saying I don't hate them, but I'm not exactly too fond of them personally. It's not nothing to do with them being from Africa, but they just happen to come from there. They come with the attitude that we're the original black people. Y'all just not us. You're supposed to bow down to us. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not bow down to you.
And you know, something that we dangerously do, I think, is we kind of group all of the Africans together and consider them all as being one. Africa is one of the most diverse places, and but part of that is because we have this black and white mentality where we think that there's black people and then there's white people, but there's so many different. Black is not a race.
Right.
Black is the color of people.
Right.
The way my Native American grandfather puts it, there's two types of people. There's people and then there's white people. They're the only ones that are different. They're the only ones that are allergic to the sun. They're the only, like, you know what I'm saying? Like they're the only ones with those crooked noses. But when you get down to it, let's just look at Africa, right? In Africa, you have a group of people called the Baka. Now these people grow to a height of about 3 feet tall, maybe 4 feet tall. They're ingenious people. They've been able to survive all these years. Sometimes they're called pygmies. Sometimes they're called tiny people. Sometimes they're called midgets or dwarfs. But at the end of the day, there's no actual deformities about them. Like they're not suffering. They're not afflicted from some type of medical condition. They're just people of small stature.
Right.
At the same time, on the same continent, you got a group of people called the Mandinka, who may grow to a height of 7 feet tall.
Right.
But because both these people have dark skin, because they both have fat, round noses and kinky, curly hair, we group them together and we call them black, not realizing that these are two separate races of two different types of two beautiful people.
Right.
You know, it's beautiful to talk about the black race and unity within the black race, but at the end of the day, there really is no black race. There's many races that make up black people, just like there's many races that make up white people. You know, the people in Spain don't look like the people in Sweden, and the people in Sweden don't look like the people in Italy, and the people in Italy don't look like the people in Greece. You know, we're talking about Andalusian, we're talking about Scandinavians, we're talking about different people, but because they all have, you know, light colored skin and, you know, straight hair, we group them all together and we call them white. The difference is, though, all those white people can get together and put together some type of an agenda and say, because we're the ones that are different, because we are the minority, we can
Mhm.
find a way to control the masses.
Right. But this
Somehow we've lost that unity.
that's very true. Let me interject about the Italian part. The Italians are black, whether they want to believe it or not, because once they hit the sun, the melatonin starts to kick in.
Yeah,
I
no
mean,
bullshit.
the melanin. I'm sorry, the melanin starts to kick in.
Yeah.
They just like to avoid the sun.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that's one thing. But the truth be told, the racism, discrimination, the oppression of black people is derived of the fact of the cowardice of the whites because of the lack of numbers they really have. That's where
Exactly.
that's where all this
That's
racism
why they
comes
want to control populations.
right.
They are already outnumbered globally. God forbid one little island in the Caribbean produces 2 million more motherfuckers.
Right.
God forbid one little island in Indonesia produces another 3 million.
Right.
We got to put that in check. We got to vaccinate them so that we sterilize them at the same time without their knowledge. But shit, that's a whole nother podcast in itself.
That's a whole nother podcast. I'm gonna say one thing. It'll be under God's rule and rule and justice. I truly believe because of this pandemic that's going on right now, 2021 will be the year of the newborns. I guarantee you that. God don't like ugly. And guess what? Y'all done fuck with his plan. Now he's gonna get you next year.
Yeah, there's a lot of ugly shit happening right now.
You know what I'm saying? I see. I don't want to get into another podcast because we don't get into another podcast. There's a so-called billionaire who created Windows now wants to be a chief architect of a vaccination that he or has been on record as saying him and his wife has been on record saying that the world is
let him reboot your fucking body back to C:// and see how you feel.
Yeah. And that's exactly what his vaccine is derived from. And I don't want to get into this is a whole other practice. I'm gonna say one thing before we get back to the word nigga part of it. The only vaccine I will take is from Cuba.
Oh, you mean the ones that work?
Basically.
But yeah. So back to this this overused expression. My bottom line is that I feel like Ice Cube.
Mm-hmm.
We have taken that word and we have made the word ours. Mm-hmm. And whether you end it with an ER or you end it with an AH or you end it with a hard A, or to me, it doesn't matter how you say it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not your word anymore. It is our word. Let us deal with our people if we got a problem with our people saying the word.
Right.
And truth be told, it's really going to come from the problem with the word is more so going to come from the older generations.
Right.
Because they heard both versions of the word. And whenever they were called it wasn't friendly and it wasn't brotherly and it wasn't lovingly.
No. It was full of hate. And probably as they watch one of their older ancestors getting hung from a tree.
Yep.
From being lynched. We could go through many massacres. We go to talk about Rosewood. They made a movie about Rosewood, Florida.
Yeah.
Which I seen that. It was shocking to me to see this. We just seen a little snippet of the lynching that black people had to endure. Even Emmett Till, because he whistled at a white lady, he ended up dead.
He supposedly whistled at a white lady.
Supposedly.
But I mean, still, even if he did, maybe at most he deserved a smack upside his head for stepping out of line and trying to put himself in the shoes of a grown ass adult. Right. Not get a fatal beating because he dared to address a white woman.
I think if he did do that, she probably liked it.
She probably did.
And
But
and
whether
that's
she liked it or not, it was out of her control because the environment took over.
exactly
The white men stepped up and stepped in.
because they were enraged that she liked it.
More than likely. And his mother made sure that that casket stayed open so that you can see what they did to her child.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Yeah, that's why it wasn't really funny when Lil Wayne made that comment about I'll beat the pussy up like Emmett Till.
See
You know, that was bad taste. At the
Mhm.
same time, I told people not to get their panties up in a bunch because nobody said nothing when Remy Martin used the line. It's like, first I'm gonna get it hot, then I'm gonna get it there, then I'm gonna beat somebody down like Emmett Till. Like, she actually used that in one of her rhymes, and that was like back in the early 2000s. We don't know how to approach each other with love and education. Our first thought is, well, fuck Lil Wayne and let's boycott. No, did anybody reach out and talk to him? Y'all quick to call Farrakhan when there's a beef, but did anybody pick up the phone and call Farrakhan and say, hey, can you educate our brother Wayne over here?
Right. No one did that. No one did that. No one did that, and that's the problem. My opinion is we need to stop using the word period.
Coming from someone who made a 2-year conscious effort, I can tell you it's not as easy as you may think it is.
Right.
Because it just rolls off your tongue. It's especially in what I call witty situations, where there's a big surprise factor involved. Somebody drops the ball in an epic way.
Right.
Nigga, what is you doing?
Right.
You ain't seen somebody in 10, 15 years. Yo, what's up, nigga? What I'm saying? Like, it just rolls off the tongue, especially when you've been conditioned to use the word like it's just another word.
Right.
And truth be told, it is just another word, but there is power in these words.
Right.
And that goes back to the energy that you put into it, because you could end it with an A or you could end it with an ER.
Mm-hmm.
And you, regardless of how you end it, you could be loving or you could be hateful.
Right.
With either term.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, they're the same term.
It is the same term. It's just spelled differently. It is the same term in your book and the same term in my book. And when I hear people of of the different color that use it, it just enrages me. It actually puts me in a state of snapping, because like you be like, who said that? Who said that? Who said that? Now you looking to do damage, but we as Afro Americans, as Negroes, the laws are never in our favor. The system is not in our favor.
It's not designed to be.
So we have to take heed when you hear someone say that. We have to think strategically and politically when addressing that to the people who have no permission to use it, and also in our community, try to use it less. I know it's hard, but try to use it less within our community to build some sense of pride and prestige in our community also.
Yeah, and another thing that we can do is try to put a conscious thought into your use of the word.
Right.
There was a meme back when I was doing Facebook. Can you believe I've been off Facebook for like over 12 years?
Yep.
But back when I was using Facebook, there was a meme where there was a desk being pulled by like 4 people.
Right.
And it was 2 pictures, one on the top, one on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
The one on the top had a person standing on top of the desk pointing his finger forward as the people were pulling it. The one on the bottom had the 4 people pulling it with that 5th member pointing his finger forward. He was actually down there pulling it with him. And up at the top, it said boss, who was being pulled along. And down at the bottom, it said leader.
Right.
You know, the leader's going to get in there and do the work with you.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a boss is going to just try to tell you what to do.
Right.
You know, we got this, we try to have this boss mentality, but we as a people don't like being bossed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we as a people, we know how to get physical and settle our differences and then move on the next day. I've seen that in my childhood. I've had beefs with my homeboy, and then the next day we had the ice cream truck. You know what I'm saying? I've seen it in Turtle Hook. I've seen it in high school. You know, boys that have been chilling for years, all of a sudden they beef in the day. They fight it out, and then, you know, the next day they chilling.
Right.
You know, we have that ability to and I'm not saying that it's right to always get physical, but that's kind of a part of us. You know,
Right.
you know, when we're challenged, we buck.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We buck back, and there's no shame in that. At the same time, the thought of having somebody constantly over you, telling you what to do, telling you how to do it, watching your every move, it's frustrating for us as a people, as opposed to somebody getting down there and saying, hey, look, this is how you do it. We could do this together.
Right.
Okay, you got it? Go ahead. This is all you now.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's, you know, it goes back to, it's not what you do, it's how you do it.
Exactly. And another thing too, is going to segue to my next podcast episode. We talk about workplace engagement, and it goes to that because a lot of people from the white people, when they see a black man not speak his mind, but provide an alternative, they either take it as the black man being an objection of what they're telling him to do, or they take it as if he's being a troublemaker or being difficult. When we're in a workplace, we all put our bodies on the line, no matter if it's in the hospital, the police department, the firefighters, retail stores, supermarkets. We all put our bodies on the line. If we sense something that's going to affect our livelihood, how we move in our life, we have a right to speak and say something about it.
Oh, definitely.
And not be called difficult, not be called lazy. Because by the end of the day, it's our bodies that's on the line, not yours. You're just giving orders. So I don't want to give up too much away of the next subject on the podcast, but I'm gonna get deep into that because something that I'm experiencing personally at my workplace right now. But I'm not gonna go too deep into it right at this second. Just look for the next episode. I will talk about that extensively, and how if I'm in a position of I'm in a position, I never call myself a boss. I'd rather be called a leader than be called a boss. Because being a boss is you're not really assimilating yourself to the people's personalities. You don't manage when people are managers, then you're not supposed to manage people, you're supposed to manage their personalities.
How about that?
And try to fit in where you guys come to a common denominator and to make this work.
Because at the end of the day, there's some form of production goal that your team is expected to meet.
Right. And the thing is that I'm gonna get into it. I'm gonna call white people out right now. I got some white friends. I got a lot of white friends, a lot of white coworkers. White people operate on the sense that if you're subservient and obedient to what they tell you to do, they love you. The minute you raise a little objection to what they're telling you, you're the most hated man on the block. You're public enemy number one.
Yeah.
Especially when you're black. You're a troublemaker. You're difficult. and then they'll band all together to get everybody else who you barely have any interaction with to get them to say the same shit
Yep.
and go tell the manager. And all you say, all you did was disagree with one thing, and it's World War III on your ass.
Yep. I've seen that plenty of times myself.
I've seen it plenty of times. I've seen it in my workplace discrimination. Workplace discrimination. A black nurse who's Dominican gets fired based on a lie that was created by two other co-workers that she denied a patient treatment. Meanwhile, one of my co-workers, who was a secretary in our unit in the ER, was having pain, abdominal pain, because she was, I think, 7 months pregnant, and one of the nurses who coincided with the other nurse to get the black Dominican nurse fired, told her, "Oh, we don't treat you here. You have to go to the other hospital." Meanwhile, she's on the clock working in our hospital.
Wow.
But nothing happens to her.
Wow.
Meanwhile, with the black Dominican nurse, what happened in that situation, the patient chose to leave. Chose to leave. She didn't say she didn't deny her treatment. The patient chose to leave. So, I'm sorry. If a patient chooses to leave, that's within the patient's right to choose not to be treated.
Right, because they got a right to, what is it? They got a right to self-determination.
Patient Bill of Rights.
Yeah, if they don't want to be treated by you, they don't have to be treated by you.
But then again, the black Dominican nurse was a target because the two nurses who got her fired did not like her. And ironically, one was white, one was Colombian. Ironically, they got together to get her fired because she was darker in skin color. So how is that fair? How can someone look me dead in the eye and tell me there's no favoritism going on there? The person who actually did deny treatment to a coworker still has a job. Whereas
it sounds like somebody needs to talk to the EEOC.
I'm quite sure if it was done. But if something, like I said, I'm gonna go get into my subject of the next podcast. If that something happens to me, I will bring that up because you got to bring it up. You have to bring in a pattern of discrimination that goes on.
Right.
And that's one situation I will use. It's a pattern. And we as black folks, we as darker folks, we gotta be smarter about our situation. Because the minute you hit them but you know what they don't like is when you hit them with the political way of speaking. That makes it even more angrier. They expect you to lash out. So like, this is some dumb black person acting crazy and wants to fight somebody. But when you hit them with the political and you're black, oh, that cuts deeper in their soul.
For real.
They'd be like, I'm gonna get him. And just hit him with the politics. Me, I don't hit with politics. I hit with blunt, straight force. I said, the tale like it is. This is what it is. I'm not doing it. That's it. I'm explaining to you why I'm not doing it. It makes common sense. I said, we speak about this morning, D, about common sense is not common.
And now you just got a bunch of common motherfuckers that ain't got no sense.
Exactly. There's no a lot of things when it comes to the word nigger, the word comes to race relations. If everybody exercised some selflessness and more common sense, we wouldn't have these problems we're dealing with right now.
Agreed.
We would have been over COVID right now already. That's all I'm saying. And the thing is that during this pandemic, they're using that more of a force to be even more racist.
America.
What's that song? My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. So when my forefathers, I'm like, first of all, George Washington, Paul Revere, or Thomas Jefferson are not my forefathers. My forefathers is Toussaint Louverture, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, Christophe, and Pétion. That's my forefathers, motherfucker. And guess what, motherfuckers? They freed this country too.
They damn sure did. And one of them, Ponte Sabo, founded Chicago.
Yeah, exactly.
He actually founded Chicago.
The state of Illinois.
Yep.
His statue is all over Illinois.
A Haitian.
Yep. But they won't talk about that, will they?
Mm-mm.
Oh, George Washington led the great revolution.
And you know what?
American Revolution.
You mentioned. Hold up. You mentioned another one. Paul Revere. You know, Paul Revere didn't really do shit. I mean, he did what they said he did, but he didn't do as much as they said he did. There was a black man by the name of Israel Bissell, however, that went from New England to fucking Pennsylvania on horseback, talking about them redcoats were coming.
Mm-hmm.
The two stories got merged together, and guess who became the prominent character? The white man.
Mm-hmm. Lies, I tell you, lies.
America.
This song going says that you can't call us niggas. You can't use that word. You're not allowed to.
Nah.
You just get the smackdown.
You cannot have that shit back. It is ours now.
Lay the smackdown on that candy ass. But yeah, so we're gonna wrap up this podcast. You know, we went a little bit off the subject, but it all leads to the same thing. Racism sucks.
It does.
Racism holds this country back. Oppression holds this country back. This country was never great. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. It was great for a certain race of people, but not great for everybody else. You know what I'm saying?
It really wasn't great for them either. That's why they kept going to war.
Mm-hmm.
They just tried to make it as great as it could be for them.
Right.
And they still try and get the shit right. It still ain't right.
Still is not right. My brother. So D, what's your final words on the podcast?
My final words, well, like I ended on the last podcast, I'm gonna urge everybody to find somebody the age of their parents and just give them a call and check on them, see how they're doing. Give them 5 minutes of your time, talk to them. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to also give a shout out and rest in peace to Shad Gaspard, former WWE talent who was killed this weekend, getting caught in the rip current.
Right.
Over down there in Venice Beach. His body just washed up this morning. So sad situation. The dude was a hero in the past where he stopped an armed robbery just on a humble, he just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and he stopped something bad from happening. And then he also died as a hero because when the lifeguards came out, they got to him first, and he directed them to get to his son. And they said, save my son. And when they got to the son, they turned, and the last thing they saw was this man getting pulled under by a wave.
Right.
So, shout out to Shad Gaspard, a true American hero.
Absolutely. For those who don't know who he is, he was part of a tag team called Crime Time. So definitely shout out to his family. Our prayers and condolences to his family, his wife, and his son. I hate to see the last for a son. I don't know how he's going to cope with it, seeing his father getting taken over by a rip current, and not just seeing him dead a few days later. Sad situation. Regardless of that, like I said, our prayers and condolences go out to the Gaspard family. My final words is, as you know, on the True Players Podcast, we keep it real, keep it gully. You may not like what we say, but that's the best thing about this podcast. There is no such thing as providing information first. We try to provide honest information. What's been lacking through the media? Everybody wants to be first. They don't want to be, like Denzel said, everyone wants to be first, but not be honest, not be truthful about what they're reporting. And I just, like I said, just pray for my fellow frontline workers, the nurses, doctors. I pray for everybody, even the ones who try to get me fired at my current situation right now. Um, I pray for them as well, because we're this pandemic of COVID-19. It's not over yet. The numbers are going down, but it's not over yet. And keep in mind one thing that's most important. In China, they're getting their second wave right now. They're shutting everything back down again. Their second wave is here.
It's coming. It's coming.
Our second wave is probably going to be August, probably September or October. Our second wave will be coming if we do the most responsible thing once they reopen business, which is maintaining social distancing, wearing a mask in public. Before I let this podcast go, when I was on break from work this past Sunday, my first day back, and I was in a 7-Eleven, and again, we had this guy who was complaining that it is not law that he had to wear a mask in public. The 7-Eleven guy, who so happened to be an Indian or a Middle Eastern guy, I think sound like he's from India. So listen, you're in my store, man. I'm telling you, you have to wear a mask when you come into my store. It said Cuomo, the guy who was white, said Cuomo said it's not into law that we have to wear masks. However, in every single store that you see, there's a sign outside the door saying that you are required to wear a mask once upon entering the store. It's not. It doesn't. I don't think Cuomo ever waived that.
You know, law or not,
Right.
what you do out on the streets, you do out on the streets. But once you walk into an establishment, you are now on private property.
Correct.
You now have to follow the rules of the proprietor or the proprietor or the owner of that property.
Correct.
So either the owner of that property or the person that's running the property, if it's leased or rented out, is the one that says, hey, you need to wear shirt and shoes in here or we will refuse you service. Hey, you have to wear a green hat in here or we will refuse you service. Hey, you got to wear a red shirt or we will refuse you service. Or you got to wear a mask or we will refuse you service.
Right.
And if we ask you to leave and you don't leave, you are now legally trespassing.
Correct. And again, Ricky, this is the reason why this pandemic has spread the way it spread it. Because people don't want to follow the rules. They think they're above the rules because of their pigmentation.
Sad.
You know what I'm saying? And his excuse was, yo, I come to get my cigarettes every day from this 7-Eleven. Well, keep in mind one thing. We got something called COVID-19. This is not December 2019. This is May of 2020. A lot of things happened between the last 5 months. How many people had died in this country so far? Over what? Almost 100,000?
Yeah.
Almost 100,000. Number 45 is telling people to drink Clorox and Lysol. And he's saying an unproven drug, hydrochloroquine, to cure something that has been verified that this shit don't work. I digress. But like I said, I pray for all the frontline workers, police officers, nurses, firefighters, grocery workers, Walmart workers, Target workers, Ace Hardware stores, even Micro Center that's open to accommodate everybody who has to work from home and still have the web discussions on Zoom or Google Meets, all that fun stuff. And prayers to all of them, and pray that we get through this pandemic safely without any more casualties. Because this is I say casualties. I'm not talking about death. I'm talking about casualties. Because in essence, this is World War III we're in right now. Whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, this is World War III. It's not with guns. It's not with airplanes. Not with bombers. is with a biological weapon.
Yep, and the fight is against humanity. So
exactly. If we come together and work together, we could win, we could overcome this battle. Use the old Haitian mantra: "La union fait de la force." Union makes strength. Division causes weakness. Right now, we're still in division, because right now we're in division. Therefore, we're not going to beat this anytime soon. So, you can listen to this podcast on Joey G Radio, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Anchor Podcast, Speaker Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify. Any questions, feedback, comments, complaints, you want to be a co-host, you want to join me and Ricky Brown and Joey G on the podcast, definitely email me at trueplayerspodcast@gmail.com, which is TRUPLAYAZ@gmail.com. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, True Players Podcast. You could also comment on that also. But I just ask that when you guys comment on the subscription on my YouTube, please do not solicit me any of your services. I'm not interested. Support the podcast. That's all I'm asking. Trust me. I got promoters. Trust me. I got promoters. I got engineers. Ricky Brown is my main engineer on this podcast. I got that already. Don't just come and listen to the podcast. If you want to add to the podcast as far as your opinion, feel free to do so. But don't solicit anything to me. I'm not interested. I'm gonna be real fucking gully on this motherfucker. Because how the fuck a person from India is gonna help me promote my podcast in America? All right? So don't hit me up on that shit. I'm not interested. Don't come and hit me up to promote my podcast because you need fucking money. We're in a pandemic right now. I'm not thinking about giving my money out to promote my podcast. I'm all about hoping to wake up the next day. All right? Stop taking advantage of people. This is the problem. People think demonically. When you think about money, you think about demonic activities. All right? So let's get off this fucking demonic mentality of trying to make a buck off somebody and do the right thing for each other and come together. Ricky Brown, Big Dom. We signing off, baby. That's it. Peace.
Shout out to Big Dom, he's a true player. We even talk gourmet, we be souffling. So who's playing? We talk about everything. Live, from the light to the heavy things. Live on podcast, we gon' help your time pass. We well connected, way better than Comcast. No cap, why? Cause we stay woke. And our podcast is fire, straight smoke. So pay close attention, cause we ain't the most. Shout out